Welcome to the Art of Growth and our Driven to Drawn series. Special shout out to our Type 4s joining us this week, since we are diving into the Type 4 panel. This whole series is about moving from our driven state, where we are driven by outside forces, we are pushed, we are shoved, we end up feeling like we are pulling the plow behind us, and we are trying to move toward the drawn state of invitation, of grace, of welcome, of flow. Before we get into this week's episode, the hub of all of our work is theartofgrowth.org, and that is the place to reach out to us about coaching or having us coach or train for your organization, as well as taking free online Enneagram tests or instincts tests, things like that. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll see that the first Art of Growth book has come out. My name is Jim Zartman, and I wrote a book called And I Would Lift You, which is on Amazon right now. As of right now, that's the only place to get the book, but I'm working on it. And that whole book is benedictions like the ones I do at the end of every episode, poems and writings that have shown up in every group coaching or webinar and podcast that we do. So if you check it out and leave a review, it means the world, because we are about growth ultimately here. And although most people know us as an Enneagram podcast, we want to employ all the available tools to help people grow. But for now, my friends, let's go ahead and jump in with this week's Type 4 panel on Driven to Drawn.
All right, well, welcome to the Type 4 Driven to Drawn podcast. I am so excited to be with each of you, and I would love for you to just begin by introducing yourself. Tell us where you're from, your name, and we'll go from there.
I'm Robin. I'm from Lindale, Texas.
I'm Patria from Lincoln, Nebraska.
I'm Maria from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And I'm Victoria, and I live in Boulder, Colorado.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to each of you. And we're doing this sort of research project that we're calling a podcast. And it's really trying to figure out, what does it look like to move from the driven to the drawn? What do both of them look like independently from each other? And then how do we move from one to the next? And the reason for this is because, for one, we just don't pay much attention to the sort of drawn side of ourselves. I think in general, most self-help and self-development work tends to be about the areas that need improvement. And so the attention goes on that. And yet there's this other side of us that actually is liberated or freer or happier or just not as self-conscious. And it tends to move in more of a drawn space. And our sense is that that's that side of us, we've seen both, is that can actually create something pretty amazing in this world. And so we wanted to explore this together and hear what it is like to be driven as a 4, and also what it is like when you are drawn. So let's begin with the driven. What does that look like, feel like? What are you doing? The energy that's behind it. Talk to me.
Well, I'll start off. I'll say that I feel like I had spent a lot of my life from my leaving high school out into the adult world. A lot of my life, I would call it running away. And when things got hard, I would make decisions, but it would always be from this place that felt essentially like I was running away. And now that I've really turned toward myself and I've been in this deep work, it feels very much like I'm moving towards just being who I am, like being emotional when things are hard and I'm feeling not connected with someone, that I can actually say it and not feel like I'm going to be attacked for having the feelings that I'm having. Right. So then it's like, I'm not being accepted for who I am, or that feeling of I'm not being accepted for who I am. I have these emotions inside me. I have these feelings coming up. Some of them are dark. They're like messy, and I can't really, I don't know how to organize them. And then because I've gotten the message, or I had gotten the message of suck it up, or don't be too dramatic, or don't get too, I would just put on a happy face. Yeah. I would endure. I would be the long sufferer. I'm a self-preservation 4. and I'd kind of, there would be, it wasn't faking that I was doing, because it was so real what was happening inside of me. And I wasn't necessarily squashing it down. It was just, I can't let this exist in the outside world. So, okay, I'm gonna suck it up. And there was so much happening inside.
I just want to say, as you're talking, I'm also self-preservation instinctual as my dominant instinct. And I can so see this picture as you're talking of this internal space that happens inside of me when that exactly just like what you experienced just then, like that turmoil starts and the churning starts. And it's just a space that it feels like an underwater cavern or something that I can make a little bit deeper and a little bit bigger to hold the suffering and to hold the pain so that it doesn't come out of me onto somebody else, because it just hasn't belonged. It hasn't been welcome there. And yeah,
well said. Thank you.
See, for me, I don't experience it like a running away. For me, it's more of a shutting down. It's like all of the doors and all of the windows, everything just goes, and it just closes in on itself. And I can feel it when it's happening. And it's kind of like that image of the duck where, on the surface, not much is happening, but under the water, it's just furious activity. And I can feel that. And for me, it's that kind of fundamental feeling of deficiency. That's sort of my default position, is to assume that I'm not really wanted there until I learn otherwise. And it does all kinds of goofy things to me. I mean, it stops me from reaching out to people, calling people, even people I know who I love and who love me, and I don't question that. I let them come to me because I don't ever want to be presumptuous that they want me there. That's sort of my default. And so when I'm in that, unhealthy space, what you see is actually often a whole lot of nothing. I get immobilized. I don't act. And all of the activity, it might be frantic, but it's internal.
Yeah, I so resonate with what you just said too, that I was actually thinking, Joel, when you asked the question about being driven, what do you do when you're driven? Not much. It's a very much paralysis response. Just like you said, Maria, there's all this a gale force wind and hurricanes and huge storms and blizzards happening inside, but nothing outside. And it feels very unpleasant inside, but can really capture me and froze. I just feel totally frozen, and didn't realize that was the space of feeling driven, because it took that deep growth, like Victoria mentioned, that deep work, to realize that something good could even come from that could come from inside. I get so stuck there and so used to feeling stuck, and it feels so much safer at times even. But I would say that that's how I experience it. There's just not a lot happening, not a lot of doing, very, very repressed action wise.
And that's a little, depending on how you're talking about, like, doing what, what do you do in those moments? I make myself either busy or I go into, okay, what I should do. Okay, Vic, you have to go outside. You have to walk the dog, or you have to go to the supermarket, or you have to, I don't know, you have to do something. And so I would do things to be productive. But I wouldn't actually be being with myself in that, or I'd be like with myself in this struggle to pull myself out.
So there can be both like a freezing and at the same time a busyness. There can be both a sort of in that pulls away from the wholeheartedness of living. You're not living with your whole self in it. So there's a part of you that's like, dead or quiet or shut down. And there's the other part of you that's just like going through the machinery. You're just moving, you're just doing.
Yeah, I would be on my couch, paralyzed, like sometimes crying, just not being able to, staring at the door to go, to outside, and just hate, really in a moment of like just self-hatred and, oh, what is all of this happening? And, what's wrong with me? And I'm not good enough to get, and then I would will myself to step outside, and it would probably unconsciously the voice of my mom or my sisters, suck it up, Vic, get going.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be interesting to know everyone's instinctual stacking, because my self-preservation is what's repressed. And so having the social, sexual, when I'm in a driven state, it's almost hyperactive, not functional at all, not helpful in any way. But I want, I found that it's tied to identity. When I'm driven, I start looking outside for my identity more. I want to talk to everyone in my social group and all the people that I'm close to and have them either reaffirm or say, here's where you need to fix something. I stop trusting my internal sense of self in that space and start looking for it in other places. And it's like I lose the ability to take care of myself. That's where I struggle with eating disorder. That's where I struggle with sleep. That's where I get OCD about my house. And I think it's because that self-preservation is repressed. That's when the absence of it gets really loud. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm glad you brought that up because it makes a big difference. I had a good friend of mine who had the same stacking as you did, same type, same way. Unless deeply wounded, and then that's the only time I would see the sort of pulling back and hiding out. Yes. Most of the time, it was very much like, I need to be with people. But like you said, sometimes not always very functional. Sometimes it's more of a trying to elicit something.
Because I need other people in that space, in a less functional space, I need other people to tell me who I am. That gets really scattered and really manipulative. And I know I'm being manipulative, and that becomes even more dysfunctional, and it just spirals. It becomes a nightmare. And if I ever get to the place that I'm actually quiet and stop talking, that's the really, really dangerous hard space for me. That's when my husband starts going, okay, we need to pull in help. We need to sit down and call everything off and talk about what's really behind this. Because I've only, in 22 years of being married, I think I've only hit that space 3 or 4 times. And that's, different.
What is your instinctual stack, Robin?
Social, sexual, and then self-preservation is repressed. My best friend is also a 4, and she is self-preservation on top. And that's, we have laughed for years at the differences in the way we're so much alike in so many things, but that self-preservation makes so much of a difference. It's interesting.
Yeah. I'm naturally an introvert. And so, when I'm in that spot, sometimes I have, this fantasy like, okay, if I had a superpower, I want to be invisible because I just like to disappear. And that's a really comfortable space for me when I'm under stress, is that I want to put myself in this little cocoon. I don't want to be seen. I want everyone can just forget me and just not even know that I'm here. And I think when I'm talking, as long as I'm talking, actually, it's usually pretty much a good sign, that, even if I'm upset about something, if I'm talking, it's good. I think I know when I'm in trouble, when I'm not talking, when maybe I desperately want someone to come inside my space. I desperately want to share that part of myself, and I'm not talking about it. And I could write volumes and volumes and volumes of what goes through my head that's really important to me, but that I never say aloud to another human being.
I could totally see like the bubble over your head. Like when you're in that space, that bubble's large, and there's so much going on in there that you're virtually living in a world that's inside yourself in your space. And what's helpful is actually stepping out of that. And yeah.
Maria, do I remember right that are you social dominant as well? Okay.
I am social. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cause as you guys are talking about that desire for people to come in, I think I'm social repressed. I haven't totally decided, but I almost don't resonate with that at all. But I think it has more to do with that sense, like Victoria was talking about, like what's going to be called upon from me to be present in this space. And it just feels overwhelming. And I have to really, there was a panel you guys did a while ago with self-preservation fours. And one of the things that really stuck with me was they said when they have these invitations to go out, it's like this big, huge hurdle to get over the yes and to get out the door to go do it. Mm-hmm. But then it always feels better when you actually do. And that I so deeply resonate with that. I don't have like a drive to be with people very much, but I feel so much better when I am with.
I'm so glad you're saying all this, because the instinct matters. It makes a big difference how it shows up. But what's happening internally is fairly consistent with you, in that, with all of you, with the internal space of, the emotions and what's happening there that's causing a sense of not being wanted, not the sense of not belonging, and how it manifests is going to be different. But that's part of what's fueling the drivenness, it sounds like.
I just wanted to add one thing to the thought of what it feels like when you're driven, is that everything feels final and fatal. Like there's just a sense of this, the world gets so small and there's nothing else ever good going to happen again.
Yeah. This decision will decide everything from here on out. And I have to overthink it so hard. Yeah. It's obnoxious.
Yeah. I mentioned that on an Instagram thing, but I've heard this from other fours in particular, that the hard thing about that emotion is the feeling of permanence that accompanies it.
Well, I was going to say earlier, Victoria talked about, I thought the way that I heard her say it was the avoiding belonging or the fear of belonging. And the way that manifests in me, it's not that I don't want to belong, because I desperately do, but that it's so precarious. As long as I'm rejected, I know I'm rejected. As long as I'm outside, I know I'm outside. But the second you tell me that I'm loved or I belong, all of a sudden it's precarious and I could fall off. Yeah. It's the same with joy. I struggle with being happy because the potential of disappointment is so heavy. I would rather just be miserable. It's easier. I tell my husband all the time, my gut go-to response to life is just to lay down in the mud, because no one can knock you over if you're already in the mud. And so I think that's where it's like we want belonging and we don't want to be abandoned, but at the same time, just get it over with. I'm going to put all the ugly out there on the table up front. So if you're going to reject me, you can get it over with now. That kind of approach to life. And it's super self-destructive. And it actually feeds the very thing we're trying to, the very thing that we're afraid of.
Yeah. And this I'm hearing, Robin, is this coming from your social instinct?
I don't know. I was listening to you talking about the self-preservation thing. And I'm like, you're talking about being quiet in this inner cavern, making space for these heavy feelings. And I'm like, no, there is no inner cavern. It's everywhere. It's going to be all over everything. And I have to be sure everybody hears it and understands it and feels it and knows. And I think that is the social expression of that, because I don't have that inner cavern, but my friend does. My friend that is self-preservation very much does.
Yeah, because my growth path as a self-preservation four is to express what is inside.
It's funny that both of you have different growth paths.
Yeah, I've heard it said that the growth path for self-preservation is actually to allow others to hurt a little more than I allow myself to hurt, like to let some of that come out, which is so, it goes again. Like I would almost rather disappear than put that outside of myself. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Oh, but it's so liberating. I've been doing it. This has been the work in relationship with my partner, as a sexual 9 and as a self-pres 4, and using the Enneagram and also Myers-Briggs to, help us better understand ourselves and to move through the stuff and heal and grow and all of that. But saying some things that are, are you strong enough to hold this? Can you be the container for me to hold some stuff? Because there's some dark stuff in here. There's some painful things in here. And there's also some stuff, like it'll come out as like blame and attack as well. And seeing that as I get that out and I move that through, there's the moving of that out for the clearing of then to not then be charged and triggered, and I can receive and let it in and not react, let it in, receive, and not go up into story, and just let it land and be in a sheer feeling experience of it without labeling, without, saying, and it just kind of lands. And I've been able to do that more and more through the years, to a point where I'm like, wow, there was times like, I'm really proud of myself.
Sure.
I'm really,
Yeah, it's good.
Whenever you go
and you should be, may I say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whenever you do something, because you all said, like, it's not my starting point, right? To do this kind of work is not my starting point. And your default position, I think, is what you were saying, Maria. Like, the default position for every type is what it is. You're not going to change the default position, but you can change where it goes from there. And that's what you've done. And then you have a different experience, and that's beautiful. And that's a great setup for segueing into it, because you've already started to bend it into, this is what changes as I begin to do this, to then getting into what does it look like when you're in that drawn space? What is it? And you can all, feel free to come back to comparing it to the driven as more comes up and out as you're talking about it. But let's take a stab at that. What does that look like for you?
I know for me, the drawn feeling, the image that I had in my head when I was thinking through this was like the old fashioned mop. Being driven is like when the mop is being pushed, and it splays out in all directions, and it's chaos for me when I'm being pushed. But when I'm being drawn, everything pulls together and it becomes smooth, and it feels like a unified identity. Like I stop looking at how I express myself and how other people see me and how I'm being perceived and what the outcome's going to be. And I get so enthralled with the thing I'm being drawn by that those other things stop mattering. And it's like my internal concept of self pulls together and functions as it's intended to, because I'm not looking at me anymore. I'm not trying to tell the world who I am or figure out who I am, or it stops being about me when I'm being drawn by something else.
Or maybe I get to be part of something bigger. It's not just like, it's not that focus only on this one little dot that I'm supposed to hold together, but like I'm part of something bigger and can contribute and receive what I have, which is finite. And it might be just a little tiny bit, but it can be something that can contribute to the greater picture around me, rather than being fully responsible or perfect or exacting or something like that.
To me, it's vulnerability, but feeling safe. It's feeling safe in my vulnerability. When I'm not safe in my vulnerability, that's when I don't speak. That's when I'm secretive, when I keep it to myself, all of this sort of thing. But when I'm in the drawn space, I can put myself out there, because I wear the broken bits on the outside just because I have to, because I'm a 4. And so that's just the way it is. So it's there on the outside regardless. But when I'm in a good space, I can just be really upfront about that. And I don't have to feel afraid of being rejected for that or being judged for it. And most of the time, that's actually the way it goes in my experience, is that when I wear all the vulnerability on the outside in a healthy way, people actually identify with it and they go like, oh yeah, me too. Or even if it's not them, they'll say, oh really? And but it's not a dangerous space. And I know one of the things that always makes me cry in a good way, I think, is whenever I remember, you hear sometimes clips of Mr. Rogers. And I remember him saying, he talking about, being loved for exactly who you are. And it so resonates with me because that is the thing. I don't just want people to love me, love me, love me, love me, but I want to be really, whether it's loved, accepted, appreciated for exactly the person that I am. And I can't be that at all if I'm not willing to be vulnerable and for you to see exactly who I am, broken bits and all. Yeah. So I put that out there when I'm in that drawn space, but it's in an expressive way. It's in an intimate way and not in a fearful, frantic way.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that, Maria. Yeah. The drawn side, feeling safe to express the vulnerability. And with the being drawn, this past summer was a summer of good work. And I invited each one of my sisters out individually to Colorado to spend some time with me. And I stepped forward and I was vulnerable with them. And I shared what was hard. And it was through my personal practice, through my hatha yoga practice, through the work with my partner, that I could bring these things, and there was reaction, and me the entire time feeling this shine coming through my heart, coming through my body. Just, I know that this is good. I know that what is happening is good, and saying to them, even, this is so good, what's happening? And they're being like, it's good for you, but it doesn't feel good for me. And I'm like, well, this is my path and this is what I have to do, and I can't hide anymore. I can't hide who I am.
Owning it.
Yeah. Owning it. And then I feel the high side of equanimity. Yes. And then there's more, creativity. And then as the fours are that bridge between the animal and the spiritual and the dark and the bright, and you can kind of bring full range and laugh at yourself, have the humor around it. I mean, that's been,
It's what I love about the word beautiful, because for me, beautiful has been redemptive in that way. And the 4 has exhibited that for me more so than any other type, is that beautiful is not just, as for me as a 7, it's the pursuit of happiness. But that's thin, and that can become even ugly at times. It's not the pursuit. It's like, it's the mix of light and dark. It's the mix of all of that. And holding all of that with love creates this sense of beauty that I have discovered. And it's been the 4s who've taught me that, it just by the way you've moved through the world.
I have a business, and one of the pieces of the name is broken in my business. And I've recently had this really particular example of kind of what I think we're identifying here, and is of hearing people say, either to me or just kind of reading it or hearing them say to other people, you are not broken. You are not broken. And being actually kind of caught by that, like, is that true? And kind of wrestling with that and recognizing, like, in my own growth of acceptance and seeing who I am and seeing who others are, that why do we need to, like, what is that about? Do we need to not be broken, or is there beauty in all of it? Is there beauty in the imperfections? Is there beauty in the process? Is there beauty in the differences that we bring. And that's where I can, even as I'm saying it out loud, I can even feel myself go back into the balance, into that sense of I can hold it all together in one space. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because I'd like to know what's happening internally as well as you're doing that. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to just add on to that part about the broken. My work as a Hatha yoga teacher, it's bringing everything online, bringing every single part online, and know that every single part has a right to be here. It belongs to see it, so that broken is not really broken. It's just access to, as I, see it, to all of the parts of us, which go right down to the very bottom and all the way to the top and out wide and whatnot.
So it sounds like it has to start though with you. It has to start with not a demand that others accept, but more of like, am I accepting?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it can get easily shattered by somebody else. I mean, it takes nothing for someone to put out a cruel or a judgmental word, and I go straight into shame, and okay, that just shattered that for me for now. But it is about acceptance of the self. And the thing is that I think I've really needed to do is to get to the place where I understand that it's not like, okay, so am I broken or is everything great? It's not either or, it's yes, all of it. And I think Fords, I think we know this because, we're the people who see what's really beautiful in something that's just really, painful and poignant and with all of the feeling. And, I appreciate the beauty in all of the really painful, dark stuff too. And so all of it has a place for me. And when I'm in a place of wholeness, it's incredible creativity, and it's overwhelmed with beauty, not just the pretty kind of beauty, but that darker poignancy of feeling. And, like, oh God, listen to that, that sound of that instrument. Cause I'm a music person. And so just, that sound is just achingly beautiful. And, when I hear something that's beautiful musically, I can listen to that note, that chord, that phrase over and over and over. And I will do it 1,000 times in a row just to soak it in because it's so beautiful. And I get excited, and I'll say to, my 8th husband or something who's not particularly musical, although he appreciates it. And I'll be like, oh my God, do you feel it? Okay. And I know that he doesn't feel it the way that I do. But to me, that's what it is. That is the height of it. That I don't have to be good or happy or chipper or super functional or whatever the thing is to feel at ease in my fourness. It's about realizing that, those broken pieces aren't broken either. They're all good. It's all good. And I don't have to be ashamed of that. I can acknowledge it. I can try to be more functional where I need to be, try to see what I can do to kind of get myself up over that curb or to get activated or whatever I have to do. But I can see the wholeness of the entire picture and just see that everything is good.
And that sounds like where the wellspring of creativity is just being allowed.
It's effortless.
There's no self-consciousness, and you're right. It's effortless. Yes.
Yeah. There's a sense of there's enough there. There's no desperation for getting more. There's enough there.
And fullness. There's abundance in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I would never want to be anything other than the 4 that I am, because yes, it hurts sometimes. And I guess that's the part that sucks. That's hard. We suffer more, but I would not give that good stuff up for anything. I can't imagine living with a muted rainbow or a partial rainbow. I don't want to give any of that up.
The harder part for me and my path of growth has been, started talking about vulnerability, and then, all the way through to the end of the rainbow part of that discussion. The vulnerability, the hard part of vulnerability for me was allowing myself to be happy allowing myself to have the positive emotions, because I found so much identity in the brokenness, so much identity in the damage, and coming to a place that I can go, this has actually been a good day, or I actually did really good at that thing, or this person appreciated me and we actually have a healthy relationship, and learning to value that. It brings greater contrast, I think, because when you live all in this dark range for so long, and then you have to grow and stretch and try and accept that, you know what, it's okay for me to go, hey, I'm kind of happy. And that's an okay thing. That growth was really, really a difficult path for me. And I think for me, all of it's had to do with identity. It's had to do with the fact that I found identity in the brokenness, and learning to say, you know what, there are pieces of my life that are not broken. They're actually good and healthy and strong. And that doesn't make me less valuable. It doesn't make it less beautiful. It doesn't make it less significant just because it's not traumatic. That has been an interesting journey. And in the practice of what I do in working with clients, there are times on good days when I'm functioning well and I'm in a drawn space and God is moving and doing beautiful things, and I'm excited about life and I'm able to be vulnerable. Clients can share the deepest, darkest, heaviest struggles with me, and I'm able to take that and hold it and be there and be present with them, and there's no judgment, and I don't have to identify with their pain because I have a solid identity of my own, and I'm allowed to, I can let them embody their own experience and express and work with, and there's no rejection in that space. There's just love and connection. But when I'm in a driven space and I am not super functional and not doing as well, and they start expressing pain or struggle, there is this gut response in me that goes, I have pain too. I felt this pain. I felt that. Like, I want to start connecting with it in an unhealthy way, and coming out of that overly sympathetic gut response to life, being able to let people own their pain and stand there with them without trying to take it on or connect with it, it's an interesting journey. It's an interesting growth path, I think. And I wonder how many fours have similar processes.
Yeah, I want to ask a complicated question that will be unanswerable, but I'd still like you to give it a shot, which is when you talk about being able to be in the space where you can enjoy and appreciate and trust those positive emotions more, like, how did you make that journey?
A lot of counseling, a lot of growth. There's a particular therapeutic practice that I found about a year or two ago that was super, super effective. Like, I've struggled with being empathic my whole life. Like, I would go to Walmart and struggle at the checkout because I'm feeling all the feels that everyone in line is feeling. And this particular practice that I went through and then became certified in, now that's what I'm working in, that practice identified something in me, something in my childhood where there was an emotional deprivation that happened, and having that identified and brought to the surface and going, oh, this is why I'm doing this. That part was huge. That was a huge, ginormous step. It allowed me to at least only be dealing with my own crap and not everyone else's. Yeah, that would be the biggest step. But honestly, it's just the day after day. It's seeing how much I've damaged my kids, seeing the struggles they've been through because of my inability to be happy and be present, watching them heal, watching how hard my husband's worked, to be patient while I grow. It created a determination in me that allowed me to go, okay, something's got to happen here. Something's got to shift. What does this look like? And I have to be brave. I have to be brave enough to choose joy and to hold on to my own identity and go, okay, even if you don't agree with this, my worth matters and my opinion matters, even if you disagree with it. It's getting out of that social instinct, I think. I think that was huge.
And what a gift for your children to like so many parents or, that don't do the work or that are unable to do it. And
all of my kids are very
model.
comfortable with the idea that we have to work on ourselves.
Yeah.
We all get here with trauma. We all get here with damage. There is no damage so big that we have to go, oh, this is rejected. This is not going to be okay.
Yeah, you're creating a culture of grace, and I think that's so important in any environment.
I have 5 teenagers. It is definitely
wow.
great. Lots of grace.
That's it. Yeah, you need that.
I would say too that as a self-preservation, I resonate with the goal, like the end space of what you're describing. Maybe the getting there has been a little bit different for me in the sense of I've had to own the unpleasant, darker, broken feeling, trauma.
It's still about identity, though. It's still bringing that cohesive identity.
Exactly. It's about it. In fact, through my own processes, and this is to answer your question too, I'm just agreeing with Robin that it was going deeper and recognizing the trauma, the woundedness actually. Mm-hmm. And I spent 2 years actually out loud saying to whoever would listen, my husband and whoever would listen, I am not one of those women. I am not one of those women. and then finally acknowledging, oh, okay, I am. Yeah. I'm one of those, which is just, I'm hurt and I need help. Yeah. And that then came joy. Oddly, it was like going. And then the first time I remember feeling joy was actually such a strange experience. I thought I was going a little bit mad. And I thought, somebody needs to tether this down because I'm going to like fly off into the ether and never come back.
I love Jim's question. I think it's a really good one because it's moving, like you're talking about the fuller acceptance. This is probably for a lot of people who think about, who know fours, might be confused by that. Like, well, fours, don't they own their stuff? Aren't they always like, owning their emotion?
It's about learning to have compassion for that damaged little one, for lack of a better way to put it, that little self that's still trying to figure out its place in the world and what it's worth, is having compassion for that and learning to reparent that damaged little one.
Absolutely.
And give it what it needs. It's hard.
Yeah.
It makes you feel a little crazy.
And also what's been huge for me is everyone is playing their part. Everyone's got wounds. And that by me being vulnerable and, compassion for myself and then vulnerable, expressing that out into the world, that's a gift. That then can be the invitation for anyone. It's like, people just say, I don't know how I got here. I don't know how I just opened everything up to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, all the time.
Right?
Yes.
And it's like, more of you coming online as I see it.
Well, I was just going to say, that's part. It's not like this isn't part of you. This is all part of you. The high side is all part of you, right? It's just, and this is what's so strange for us, is because we feel like, but it is. It's all part of.
The high side is scary.
But it is scary. But it's still you. It's not like, oh, I've become a different type. I just left the 4 and became something else. No, you didn't. You're still the 4, and that's the high side of the 4, and it's beautiful, and it's even more 4-ish in some sense because you're taking the fullness of all of that emotion, all of the depth of that. And I love how you're talking about it as a way to move towards the drawn. It's the reparenting of the self. It's the loving of the self. And I was thinking about the analogy of, if you think about a parent every parent thinks that their kid is the cutest and the most beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. You'll look at that kid and you'll be like, wow, that takes a parent to love that one, or to see the beauty in that one, right? But it's that way when we treat ourselves that way, when we treat the different parts of who we are that may not be, objectively beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you're describing, is you're choosing to say to that part, I love you anyways. I love the entirety of it.
We get accused of being self-aware all the time as 4s. And I would say it, like, I surprise myself as much as anybody else with what comes out of my mouth. And it isn't actually self-awareness. It's self-expression or
Yes.
ability to name
Yes.
things that are inside, but I actually
Yes.
desperately need that mirror reflecting back, and that's part of that
Yes.
ability to feel drawn and seen and understood and safe.
Yeah. And also being willing to be in the mess on the journey to that high
Yes.
side, to just, like, we're called to do something radically different, not what
Yeah.
our frontal personality is just like sucking us into.
Right.
So in the expression, it might sound a little awkward or be messy or, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm a bit different than what I think a lot of you are expressing, in that on the one hand, when there is a loss or a trauma or a pain, sure, I have to sit with that and express that and work that all out for myself. But I think for me to spend too much time delving into that would actually be a bit dangerous, I think, because I think the road from there to marination is pretty short for me. And so for me, it's actually kind of the opposite pathway, which is I can do the deeper, darker feelings. I'm not afraid of those. That's fine for me. But what I need to do to feel whole and healthy is I need to have the outlets for the other things. I need to have all of that in balance. So it's not for me about I need to get the pain down. It's that I need to get the joy up. And so one of the things I discovered, for example, after I became a mother, was that I lost all of those things. I used to sing. I was, very active in a choral group. I didn't have time for that anymore. So I stopped singing. And I used to, do a lot of kind of artistic stuff. No, I didn't have time for that anymore. And so all of that kind of self-denial, I'm busy, I'm taking care of someone else, was not good for me. And the thing I've discovered is that if I don't have that, if I don't have an artistic outlet, if I'm not listening to music or participating in music, if I'm not, creating that, if I'm not out in nature and enjoying the beauty of the natural world or seeing beautiful, works of art in museums or whatever the thing is, I'm going to be in trouble. So, but once I have those things, when I expose myself to those things, the rest of it just comes along. And so I don't spend as much time kind of wallowing in my own self-reflection, because I could do that forever. That's just not a good spot for me. So I have to take the opposite door. And because I'm really good at delving deep, I'm really good at telling you exactly what I feel. I am good at self-reflection, but I'm not as good at making sure that I have balance.
Right.
And that I'm not abandoning my own things that I need to do to be healthy because someone needs me right now. And so I don't bump myself to the bottom of the list, which is really easy to do in a lot of the roles that I have in my life. And so that's the part that takes the energy and the care, is like, no, I got to put the good stuff in and the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Thank you for saying that, Maria. Like you personified right there what I see with so many of the fours when they're in that drawn state, is that they are able to prioritize the pursuit of joy.
Yes.
And it's also different than the marination of that. It's not so much the marination of it, but it's the actual love of expression of it. And I think whatever we love, we don't hold tightly. It's not like a gripping onto it or an over identification with it. It's more of just holding it in your hands and observing it and saying, "Oh yeah, there you are. I love you. Yeah, you're welcomed here." But not becoming over identified with it. And that's what I was hearing the others.
See, but for me, that's a short path, because the need is the same to get to that point where I can look at all that stuff and say, okay, I love you, and that part belongs. But I have to personally be really careful, because when I have done that in the past, it's not that things aren't happening there, but I don't move out of it. And so that's the measure for me, is that it's like I can do that, but if I'm doing it well, there's a shelf life. If I'm not doing it well,
yes,
then I'm just kind of dwelling in darkness.
Yeah.
And that's, that's not.
It has to be
spot.
paired with action. Yeah, we as fours have a tendency to go, yeah, I can feel all the deep, dark, heavy things. I can do the counseling. I can do the therapy. I can listen to heavy music. I can have these big feels, but I think what I hear you saying is that we need action. What is the action point on this? I need to get out in nature. I need to do art. I need to do something with all of this, because I can go to counseling every week for 5 years. And at the end of it go, well, I felt a lot of feels
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
and not do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the whole longing and, is for me in the growth path has been, okay. And right now, what is happening right now? And in my relationship where a lot of the work has been done, there's been a lot of pain inside of that because of the certain circumstances and like the what is. And then I'm like in this longing, and then it's stepping back and saying, but here we are right now. And it's good. It's
the
good.
present.
And being in the present. And it's because I have the tendency to go into the past and and then, a lot of stuff happens in there in the past of my partner and then just like anger and sadness and everything's coming up. But here we are now, and all the good work we've been doing and what we're moving towards, which kind of coming back to the beginning when I was talking about like the running away and moving towards that's kind of like from here, this point now, what are we moving towards? Like total presence.
And actually being aware like that. I think that's the piece, because sometimes for anybody, whether you're for or anybody else, sometimes we need to be in that space of naming, telling the story, remembering, experiencing. And sometimes we need to be moving forward and making plans and sensing our own resiliency, and that awareness and a capacity to move back and forth, I think feels really free. And that feels like where the creativity in that drawn space really feels the most influential.
Yes.
And it's knowing when to do which and for how long and with whom.
That's true for all types. The capacity, because whatever it is that we do, we like it and we want to, or it's familiar. So we want to stay there. But the breadth and the range and the ability to dance with life, the partner, like what is this asking of me right now? That is so hard for all us types.
Right.
That's why I'm really grateful in a way because I like to process a lot. I enjoy it. I like doing it with myself. I like doing it with other people. I don't want to give that up because I like it. I could do it for days. It would be awesome. But I'm married to an 8. And one of the gifts that he has really given me, and I'm sure he has no idea, but one of the gifts he has really given me is that he does not do that. And on the one hand, sometimes that's difficult because that's not his natural talent in the world. But the thing that it stops me from doing is that because he won't let me stay there, it forces me into a future orientation. And what I've discovered, it's like, oh, I forgot to be upset about that. Because my natural tendency is that, okay, this happened and I'm feeling the pain and I'm going to keep feeling the pain and I'm going to feel the pain all night long. And, and I'm like, oh, shoot, I forgot because he's on to the next thing. And you dang it all, but it actually works. And so I'm really grateful for that when I'm kind of scared he's going to hear this now, but
and double down on it.
But it's true though that he pulls me out of that space because that just doesn't work. And sometimes that's exactly what I need. It's, getting the wheels moving, because when they're sitting there and they're spinning and they're spinning and they're spinning, I need a little bit of impetus to get over that hump, and then I can keep going. And until that happens, I could stay stuck. So yeah, I'm grateful for the people in my life who help me out of inertia because I get stuck there really easy.
That's good.
Amen.
Thank you
really well
so
said.
much. So good. Listen, as a final 2 to 3 words of what is it that a partner, a friend can do to help you in the process of moving from your driven to your drawn state. So one of them was what you just said, Maria. That's excellent. Like, he helps me to get on to the next thing and get back to the future. Yeah. What else? Making space, I would imagine. Making space for you.
I feel like fours will take up all the space available.
Yeah. I have 2 to 3 words. Oh my gosh, Joel, that might be the hardest assignment ever. I think my husband is a 9, and in his own growth work, this is way more than 2 or 3 words. He will say, are you aware of what you actually want? Like, are you aware of what you actually need?
Yes, that's good.
That's really helpful.
Yeah. My husband said something similar one time. He said, it was actually in the course of an argument, but his comment was, I don't know how to win. And what he meant by that was, I don't know what you're asking me for. I feel like you're upset that you don't have this, but I don't know what's needed. And that is carried over into exactly what you said, the sense of what is it you're wanting to see happen here? Oh, I have no clue. I just want to wallow.
Yeah. Concrete types will tend to do that.
I just want to say, I ask myself in the morning before my head leaves the pillow, who am I? Where am I? And what do I need today? And that helps me to orient to myself for the day.
Grounding. Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough. This has been so rich. My heart's with you in this moment, and I have deeper appreciation for you after this conversation. And so thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us for the Type 4 panel. You can follow us on Instagram at just Art of Growth. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. And if you leave us a review on iTunes, it really helps people find the show. And if you aren't already signed up for our newsletter, you can do that at theartofgrowth.org. But other than that, my friends, I just want to close us out with a benediction. And I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that just published a book called And I Would Lift You by Jim Zartman. And I'm going to close us with a benediction from this book that I think is appropriate for our Type 4 friends. May you be nourished in the good ground of belonging. May you be planted among strong trees near fresh water. May you be steady, surrounded by stable ground and deep roots. And in that place of belonging, may you witness your becoming. May you be guarded from the full force of gale winds and emerge from the strength of a formed foundation. As the setting and seasons shape you, may you come into all the promise that was in the seed of you at the dawn of time. And as you reach out into the light of the fullness of your becoming, may you create a place of belonging for others to thrive in the shadow of the shelter you have become. Grace and growth, my friends.